speaking to us on ocular infection and allergies in children, treatment guidelines.
Thank you, sir. So I'll be talking on ocular infection and allergy, particularly in children's. So we'll try give treatment guidelines. As we all know, corneal infection is one of the leading cause of ocular morbidity and blindness worldwide. Together, ocular injury and ulceration responsible for nearly 1.5 to 2 million new cases of monocular blindness every year. Even today, the xerophthalmia actually, has a staggering number worldwide, nearly about 350,000 cases annually diagnosed, ophthalmia neonatum, and less frequently herpes and its consequent visual axis opacification, and of course the complications related to the vernal keratoconjunctivitis forms a big burden, particularly when it comes to childhood blindness. Each year, 500,000 new cases are added to the existing prevalence, where 70% is directly being vitamin A deficiency. It's been estimated a child goes blind somewhere in the world every minute. This number is staggering and difficult to tackle. So globally, there has been an increase in the tendency of allergy, not only, the gender difference which used to be there earlier and have an early onset, and they have a very protracted course in these cases. So where a combination of factors, environmental, hygiene, nutrition, and genetics plays an important role, and increasingly we do have an atopy which actually even compounds these allergy manifestations at very early in the clinical course. You do have an armamentarium of drugs which act at a different loci, and unfortunately at this point in time, the steroids is the only mainstay of therapy, particularly when it comes to allergic eye diseases. Often we end up, either underdiagnosing or overdiagnosing, so invariably they get steroids get abused in these cases, may end up having a cataract and a steroid-induced glaucoma that can be visually sight-threatening. So there are various authors have been proposed the Tyler-based approach in order to minimize, the risk of overtreatment and the consequent effects of steroids. At this point in time, each of this grading system, the Tyler-based treatment has its own limitations. So the Nikhil actually, based on his 20 years of a practice, he has actually come out with a very beautiful dynamic scaling, so wherein the signs have been given a much more prominence, and also to classify the severity and a periodicity, that is the disease-free interval. Everything has been taken into consideration before we arrive at the dynamic grading system. And of course, with the treatment, the scale can actually change. We can accordingly modify our treatment modality. The cases can be, classified as a mild, moderate, intermediate, and a chronic. It's again based on a clinical science. And also we do give a little importance to the clinical science at times. And a severe and a blinding diseases actually need a much more aggressive course of treatment in order to minimize those consequent side effects. In the scale, once they start responding, we can actually, once they get improved, so the medications accordingly tailor-based to the cases. Coming back to the slide here, in a milder variant where you mainly do the avoidance of exposure to the allergens, high rubbing, and at certain times you can use a prophylactic Mott stabilizer, and very rarely we may have to consider steroids in the milder variant. Whereas in a moderate to severe variant, where steroids is a main role, and in a severe diseases, we might have to actually resort to the either topical or a systemic immunomodulators in order to control the VKC. This is precisely a step ladder approach. As in the clinical course, if the child start responding better, we may have to downgrade your treatment. You may have to remove the steroids or quickly taper in order to avoid the long-term complications. So this kind of approach actually makes very beautifully we can actually document the signs, grading of inflammation, disease-free interval. Thereby we can actually tailor the medication according to the need of the child. And some of the topical immunomodulators, something cyclosporin and tacrolimus, are equally effective. Tacrolimus is seemed to be 80 to 100 times much more potent than a cyclosporin, and even a long-term studies have shown even up to 3 years it can be safely used. Although we don't recommend in a cases children who have a repeated recurrent herpetic blepharokeratoconjunctivitis, we don't use this one in a xeroderma pigmentosa. They have a higher propensity for a tumor development. There is a one, the basically one of the demerits of using a tacrolimus in a long run is that we may actually precipitate conjunctiva associated tumor. So therefore, it could be limited to, I tend to use it 2 seasons in a year where course of the disease is much more severe, and try to give a break and restart if necessary. And in a certain instances, we also switch to the either a short-term or a long-term systemic immunosuppression in order to completely break that, allergy each cycle, thereby, to achieve a good remissions very early on. And these cases need to be monitored, and it has to be in a conjunction with an immunologist or a rheumatologist where they have an access to these medications and to monitor. And in a cases wherein you have a consequent complication related to the allergy, that has to be tackled in a timely manner. Certain cases may need a surgical intervention in order to facilitate corneal healing. There are newer drugs, we don't have much experience, although this can be used in a case-to-case, in a rare case scenarios. And particularly SN group has actually showed a very elegant results in a very recalcitrant cobblestones where they have resorted to the mucous membrane. So the conjunctiva, the upper tarsal conjunctiva tend to have the muscarinic receptor 3, which oral mucosa doesn't have. That's one of the potential surgical solution to the recalcitrant papillae in this particular instance. And these are the certain complications we would get to see either directly related to the disease course or due to the adverse effect of the long-term steroids. And these are the recommendations, the protective eyewear and some of the things, exposure to the dust, pollen, dust mite, which has a long way in reducing and minimizing the chronicity of the allergy in these children. So move on to the corneal infections. So the numerous studies have shown the childhood infection accounts for nearly 11% of all infections across the world. And recently there has been an increase in the trend because of use of orthokeratology lens. And they do have a various risk factor. So at times, it may pose a diagnostic dilemma. There is a wide geographic variation. At times it may be a mild innocuous disease, can have a devastating corneal destruction. So there is a scarcity of literature when it comes to guidelines, particularly if you have an infection in a young children's. So they tend to respond differently. These are the certain predisposing factor, ophthalmic risk factor. You do have a systemic risk factor, which all makes them vulnerable to have an infection very early in the course. As I already mentioned, the recent emergence of orthokeratology practice, particularly in Southeast Asian countries, have increased the risk of having a corneal infection, particularly Pseudomonas. And these are the 2 important publications from India which has come where in the Indian setting, the trauma seems to be one of the important risk factor for a keratitis. And compared to the worldwide, so particularly Southeast Asian country where virulent organisms, something like Streptococcus, pneumoniae, coagulase, positive cases, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa is a very important risk factor even in a non-contact lens user. This may actually shows that environment play an important role. So whenever we approach any infective keratitis, it has to be very stepwise. You need to have a comprehensive evaluation in addition to the appropriate history, and judgment should be based on the clinical telltale of clinical signs, and wherever applicable microbiological workup play an important role in arriving at a definitive etiological diagnosis, thereby maximizing the clinical success. It's also very important to rule out all non-infective causes where it may be primarily related to the nutritional issues that can be easily managed in these cases. It's very important to recognize one of the neglected entity, microallergic conjunctivitis, wherein you have a recurrent blepharitis, plictonular keratoconjunctivitis. Here in a simple problem would be a just simple refractive error. If we can actually, avoid that, eye rubbing, so this can be eliminated also. So although the second most commonest in our setting is the tuberculosis. So
Could you just conclude your talk, please?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the typical history and a clinical picture is a mainstay while diagnosing infective keratitis, but children with a diverse clinical spectrum can cause a diagnostic dilemma. And as I said, diagnostic microbiology plays a very important in atypical cases in arriving at definitive diagnosis and choosing the right appropriate antibiotic or antifungal or in a viral, antiviral. Appropriate management ensure the minimizing the damage to the visual axis. And particularly in a congenital herpes, the oral acyclovir should be considered indefinitely to minimize the risk of complications or recurrences. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Ramappa. So I think we have to be remembering that many of these problems are preventable, especially the infections. And when we are dealing with allergies, we have to be aware of the fact that our problem should not be worsened by our management. Many of our ophthalmologist colleagues are using steroids very frequently for VKC. I would say we should desist to the severest form only to use steroids. Otherwise, don't use steroids, use the mast cell stabilizers or other group of drugs, because we have seen even in conditions of like strabismus post-op, if we give steroids, in 2 weeks' time, 5% of the cases are supposed to be in the general population which are steroid responders, and we found that the intraocular pressure starts rising. And unless you are monitoring the intraocular pressure, there may be a problem of steroid-induced problem. So if you are giving steroids in VKCs, look for the IOP.